Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Henry Gordon Smith, and as you can see, I'm joined by Alexander. We're going to introduce him in a moment, but for now, we'll keep him mysterious as we allow more people to join. So get comfortable and think about fresh fruit, strawberries, vertical farming, anything related to this, because this is another Agritecture Designer office hours where you can ask us anything. So this is just me welcoming you and giving you a little bit of time to join before we begin officially. So again, we're so happy you're here. I'm Henry, and I've got Alexander here, and we'll introduce him in a moment. But for now, get comfortable and think about what you want to know today, what your objectives are. It's always good to join a webinar with goals. For me, I'm really excited because I haven't actually been the host. I haven't had the time to be the host of one of these in many, many, many months. And we're doing these consistently, and I just haven't been able to do it. So I'm really, really excited because I've missed them, especially all the creative questions I get from the audience. And I'm always so passionate about just answering questions that you have and guiding others to the next step. So we're so glad you're here. Welcome. We're going to give a couple more minutes to make sure everybody benefits from the entirety of the presentation. So just hang tight there. And what else will I say? I mean, strawberries, the last time I had a good strawberry was probably summertime in our garden. I'd say that's probably the last time I had really one that excited my taste buds. But I really wish I could have them more often. And we're going to talk about maybe ways that that's possible. Okay, so we're here in about 3 minutes, which is typically the part where I officially begin. Welcome, everyone, to another Agritecture Designer office hours. These are office hours just like you would have in college, where you can sort of go to your professor and ask anything. So this is a place where you can ask us anything. In every single episode and webinar like this, we have a guest visitor with us. And today we have Alexander from Vertiberry. How are you doing, Alexander?
Very good, very good. Thank you for the invite, Harry. So we're really looking forward, let's say, to speak about strawberries today together with you.
Should I be saying Alexandre or should I be saying Alexander?
Alex, let's keep it.
Okay, Alex. Let's stick to Alex.
It's accent short, so totally focused.
So I get it right, and I see, Alex, you've transformed into a bit of a strawberry farm here. Well, we're going to talk about some of that technology in a moment. But again, these office hours are Agritecture Designer office hours. So just to kick things off a little bit, I want to make sure that you are aware of Agritecture Designer. And Agritecture Designer is the world's first farm planning software. You can literally log in under a 7-day free trial and go through step by step to develop the business case for your greenhouse, vertical farm, or container farm. There's a lot of features on here, including educational tools where you can take classes about business models, technologies, crops you should be selecting. All of this is available to you at a subscription that I'll talk about in a moment. In addition to education, you can actually do the crop research on the software where you can choose from different crops, including the amazing strawberry. And you can then do research in the market to validate the price and packaging and quality of that, which then gets added to a library like you would see here that you can use for the next part of the software, which is the modeling part of the software. So you can model farms, and in this modeling part, you can also select strawberries as the crop you're interested in, including different types of strawberries and different systems. So this isn't really about me. This is really about Vertiberry today. And Vertiberry is also a part of our software and one of our partners. What does that mean? That means that we have validated that Vertiberry is doing good work, that they are a vetted supplier, a trusted supplier worth working with. We've also talked to Vertiberry about things like how long it takes for them to install their project, where they work, what kinds of integrations, minimum budgets, etc. And you can learn all about Vertiberry as you log into the software and explore how they might be a fit for you, their experience, and even aspects of their commitment to environmental and social governance. And again, it's totally possible to contact us to request quotes from Vertiberry so that they can give you a quote for your strawberry farm as fast as possible. So with that brief introduction, you sort of get an idea of what we're doing here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pass on this conversation to Alex for a little bit. He's going to give a bit of an explanation of Vertiberry, and then we're going to open it up to any questions you have about strawberries, Vertiberry, Agritecture Designer, or anything related to this exciting work of urban and controlled environment agriculture. Again, we're so happy we're here, and let me just pass it off to Alex for a moment.
Thank you, Henry, and thank you for these super nice words. Maybe let's say before digging into the topic of vertical farming, strawberries, and vertiberry, maybe a couple of words of who I am. So I'm one of the two co-founders of Vertiberry. We are a Belgian-based company incorporated in 2018, where we kind of had the dream, well, we want to do something impactful, we want to do something good, and well, we want to make sure that people have the availability to, let's say, eat those famous delicious strawberries that you can grow in your backyard in season, but which are unfortunately not always available due to multiple reasons. Climate is one of them, the location where you're based, seasonality, name it, plenty of reasons why you cannot enjoy, let's say, or not always enjoy those amazing strawberries. One of the two founders, I'm actually a lawyer from training, so completely different backgrounds, worked in big corporate companies before, let's say, jumping into that super interesting world of vertical farming. And let's say now, we're more than 5 years down the road. We have built systems a bit all over the place. And I really want to, let's say, guide you a bit through a typical strawberry journey. So we'll focus first, let's say, on the crop itself, and then how it translates into technology, because let's say we firmly believe that it's the crop, the produce that needs to be central, and not, let's say, a technology. A technology is, in our opinion, a mean to achieve certain goals. In our goal, meaning producing year-round the most delicious strawberries wherever you're located. So let's say when we dig into the strawberry world, so how do you get, let's say, those perfect strawberries? Well, you first of all need to start with a young plant production. It's compared to lettuces, herbs, microgreens. You don't start with seeds, although not yet, because let's say there are companies working on developing strawberry seeds for commercial use, but let's say there are still, in our opinion, at least 5 years of development to go before, let's say, those become really accessible. So you will start from a young plant, which will come from what they call a runner. So you have a mother plant. That mother plant will try to, let's say, duplicate itself, make sure that it creates some babies for the next phase. And those small runners, you will need to root those. That rooting step is a, let's say, rather technical, difficult step, but let's say with the technology or software, it's that technology handling everything. So first step that you really need to take care of. Why is that also super important is you cannot fly young plants all over the world like you want. Just to give you an example, we are currently based, or let's say I'm at the moment based in Belgium. If we would say we want to launch a vertical farm producing strawberries, and we would say, well, bring me those high qualitative young plants, because that's often a problem, that you don't find the quality that you want to bring into your vertical farm. It's either full of diseases, the quality is not there, a high usage of pesticides. Let's say those are all elements that you don't want to have in your farm. You want to have high quality young plants that will produce high quality strawberries. So, but let's say we are not allowed legally to fly in young plants with substrate into North America, for example. So in that, for that reason, you either have to buy young plants locally, which are unfortunately at this stage inferior to what you can find here in Western Europe. So our solution there is to provide, let's say, with also propagating units to make sure that you can grow your young plants yourselves. And then as soon as that your young plant is ready to go into fruit production, you will have those typical or technology to grow the strawberries year round. So you end up having a full circle of producing from unrooted runners, the cuttings. You make the young plants, you transplant those young plants into the production of the fruit production phase, and then you'll be able to enjoy more or less 2 months after you would have planted your young plants of the first berries. And then, of course, well, you will ask me, well, how long can you harvest? I will have to tell you, it depends. It depends on for multiple reasons. One of them is the variety that you're using. It's the type of plant that you're using. So are you using June bearers or everbearers? June bearers meaning you plant them, they give a big flush, and then you move them out and you plant a second, a third, and a fourth time in the year. Or you go for what they call everbearers. Everbearers meaning they will have more a stable supply over the year, so they will produce less in a certain period of time, but over the period it's more or less similar of what June bearing plants are capable of producing. So you see you need to focus, well, let's say, on those multiple steps. And there, let's say, I come to the technology. We have let's say developed the technology to both produce those young plants and the production system to grow these young plants into adult plants, producing those amazing juicy strawberries as you like them. Because that's, let's say, the things that we offer. So we don't only offer, let's say, the technology with as is. No, we are there. We want to provide all the technical support that is needed, but we can also offer all the biology behind it, because a full production of strawberries can easily take 6 months. So there you see, if in the middle of your production you get into troubles, let's say, we're always there. My team is always there to guide you to see what is happening. What can we do to remedy, to find a solution for all these problems? So really, we're there from the technology to the biology to all the support that is needed, and of course the continuous optimizations that are possible. I see here a question of Tim. Speaking of getting strawberry plants, we're looking for some at the moment to continue test on tunable light in our own farm in Berlin. Would you have some, or recommend where to get some? Yes, definitely, Tim. Let's say, depending on the varieties that you would need, we'll definitely be able to guide you to partners of ours. So that's definitely possible. So maybe at the end of the call, I can give you my contact details, or you send an email to mail@vertiberry.com. And those are emails that I answer personally, so I'll be able to guide you.
Alex, thank you for that presentation. Please continue if you have additional elements, and then I have some questions for you before we open it up to other questions. So please continue.
No, so maybe to show a bit what we've done already. So we were one of the selected consortia in the Homegrown Innovation Challenge. Some of you might have known it, others don't. It's, let's say, a challenge that has been written by the Weston family. The Weston family are the owners of Loblaws, the let's say largest retail chain, food chain of Canada. And let's say we're one of those selected consortia. So we have already deployed now into North America. The farm is operational in Cornwall, so just on the border between Quebec and Ontario. And we just signed a big deal where we will set up a large-scale strawberry farm in the Quebec province, which will supply up to 30 tons, so 30,000 kilos of strawberries per week. So we will start construction mid of next year. to launch that facility as well. And next to those, let's say we have projects done here in Belgium and the Netherlands. So happy to show you around if you would be here in the neighborhood or overseas if that's more convenient. So that's, let's say, in a nutshell, what we do at Vertiberry. So we're 100% focused on vertical farming solutions dedicated for strawberries, going from young plants to fruit production, and we assist on the technical and biological level. So also, if you have already your own system and you run into troubles, we can also help you to, let's say, optimize it, to tailor it, to improve it, to find, well, what's the problem, how can we improve the outputs of your system, and see what are the optimizations needed. Back to you, Henry.
Thanks so much, Alex. Wow, you covered a lot. It was like a very brief masterclass on how growing strawberries work, as well as the services you provide, and that's excellent. And congratulations on the Homegrown Innovation Challenge from the Weston family. You know, I was a judge for that, so I was very excited to see your application, and it was an honor to look at all the numerous ones. And that challenge was really interesting because it was focused on strawberries, right? Or not strawberry, berries. There was anything berry
exactly.
related. And so why are berries so hot? You know, I mean, you know, they chose berries. They could have chosen anything else, but why are they hot for you? Why do you think they're hot for everyone else?
Let's say if you compare, let's say, to the other products that are currently produced in a vertical farm, well, lettuces and herbs, well, you don't get as excited to them. Let's say at a certain moment you just get bored about your basil, your lettuce, whereas strawberries, it's always a good pick. Go to the supermarket and look at a nice head of lettuce and compare that to a beautiful basket of fresh, good tasting strawberries. Well, my choice is quickly made. Although I would pay a bit more for that basket of strawberries, I would always opt for strawberries. But what's the difficulty is, well, strawberries, it's just a way more challenging crop. People are not aware of it. You don't start from seed, so you need to make those young plants. So the cycle is longer, and let's say there is just a bigger willingness to pay for these products. And it's let's say an evolution, I think, in the vertical farming scene, that where we start exploring new crops, where the barrier to entry gets higher and higher, the difficulty becomes higher and higher. And let's say we're based in Belgium, and well, Belgium is not only known for beer and chocolate, but actually also for strawberry knowledge. There is a research center, Hoogstraten called, which has a worldwide reputation. So let's say we as Belgians, except of brewing beer, we also know something about strawberries. So it's, let's say, that combination that pushed us to get into that field as well.
Yeah, very cool. And you know, you and I met many years ago, and one of the things I like to inspire others to do is to get involved in this industry if they're not involved. And I think a lot of people are afraid that if they're not an engineer, or if they're not a grower, they can't really find a space. So can we just speak briefly? What's your educational background and what's your professional background before getting into vertical farming?
So I'm a lawyer by training. So I never practiced law, but I then went to a business school, and then I worked in a big multinational in supply chain and treasury. So let's say I've kind of a broad sense, but I think the most important element when you move, let's say, into, let's say, farming in general, and that's maybe, let's say, not only applicable for vertical farming or greenhouse farming, is if you can secure your offtake, it becomes all way more interesting. It's both for the products that you can grow in a greenhouse. Same thing applies for vertical farms. So if you see, well, I can secure some offtake, finding the right technology to enable you to grow year round becomes already easier. Finding financing partners, finding a location. If you can say, well, I have my clients, it helps a lot to launch in it, and that's a bit of thing that we used to have. We had clients in the scene, and so the launch was, let's say, a bit easier compared to, let's say, other farms that launch in the hope to sell. And often, let's say, that's a bit the thing that you see. especially in the vertical farming scene, because there were quite some spotlights on that industry. Well, people launched, but without real offtake. So they kind of hoped for it, but it never came through, unfortunately.
Well, thanks for sharing that story. I think it's also very inspiring. And I think it's really cool that you've landed in a place that has this sort of combination of interests. And it sounds like you're getting, winning awards and getting exciting projects. So we're honored to have you as a partner with Agritecture Designer. Let's get into some questions. We've got a really engaged audience here. I'm going to focus on the strawberry questions first, and then we can get into some of the general vertical farming questions. So first, let's start from Tim Schaefer. What is the biggest challenge for the vertical farming strawberry grower, and how is your system helping with these?
It depends of the location, let's say. So depending, let's say you have, if I would see what are the three main elements in a successful vertical farming operations for strawberries, is access to high quality young plants. So if you start with bad material, well, you will end up with bad results. So I would say this is really spot number one. Secondly is, well, if you don't have offtake, well, you will start producing, but if you need to start throwing away strawberries, well, you will end up making a big loss on all that products, because it's not compared to, let's say, full soy production, where your operating costs are rather limited. In a vertical farm, you have continuously your usage of electricity and your HVAC control and so on. So your costs start running. So if you don't sell the products that come out of it, you will, let's say, bankruptcy might come faster than later, unfortunately. So I would say young plants, offtake, and then of course, if you can have access to a sustainable energy source, I think that's the third one. I would say if you can have these three, let's say success, I'm not going to say guaranteed, but your chances will be very high.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. And you talked about the project in Quebec, which obviously has renewable sources. Can you give any more information about the location of that project?
Yeah. So it's the region of Quebec will be more or less an hour max outside of Montreal, and their production will be 30 tons per week. So it's quite a
Wow,
big operation.
quite big. Yeah.
Will be a facility, just to give you an idea, of 60 kilometers of those gutters. So, of course, stacked and in multiple rows and multiple growing chambers. But it will be, let's say, quite large scale with, let's say, the partners that are involved over there. Let's say we're speaking with the right people, let's say.
That's very exciting. Congratulations again. I'm looking forward to hearing that project develop, and I would love to tour it when it's done and showcase it on our blog.
For sure. For sure.
What method do you use to pollinate the strawberries? This is obviously a big question that comes across a lot, but how do you pollinate?
Classic bumblebees. So let's say we don't reinvent the wheel. Let's say they do a terrific job. Of course, what you now see is also, let's say, beeless pollination systems. So let's say we check it and keep an eye on the companies developing those beeless systems. But let's say what we saw out of a lot of research, Wageningen just published research where, let's say, the bees or the bumblebees still do a terrific job. So compared to that, technology is still evolving, but let's see where it goes. We're working with again a Belgian company called BioBest. They're they have a worldwide presence. So let's say we go only for the best of the best. So those are one of our suppliers.
Okay, thank you so much for that one. You're getting a lot of questions. This is a popular topic. I mean, a very engaged audience today. From Mark, we've got a question about how long could the hydroponic strawberry cultivation be, which I think is a question for the growth period. Can you share a little bit on the growth period, the sort of timeline for that? Again, you talked about you get the young plants, right? So try to give them a perspective of that journey.
Exactly. So let's say you start with ready to plant young plants. You move them into the fruit production system. Let's say after more or less 8 to 9 weeks, you will start harvesting your first strawberries. And as I said at the beginning, it then depends: are you using June-bearing strawberries, or are you using ever-bearing strawberries? If you start using June-bearing strawberries, you will harvest during more or less 6-7 weeks max. After that period, you will push those plants out and plant new plants in. So you will have more or less up to 4 cycles per year that you can grow. Of course, how will you mitigate to making sure that you can supply year round? You will start having multiple growing rooms and plant at different moments in the year, just to ensure that you have continuous supply for your clients. If you go more into the June-bearing varieties, you will plant more towards once a year, because they are able to keep on making new flowers. And if you can make new flowers, well, you can continuously push your production. Delphi there states that it would technically be possible to even get them up to 2 years of production. Let's say, we prefer to say at a certain moment, you also need to start mitigating your risk, and you want to bring in fresh produce, because, well, those strawberries, well, they become quite bushy as well. So at a certain moment, you also want to make sure that you clean your system. You make sure that if there are potential threats in there, that remove them, you clean your system, and you relaunch again. So I would say up to 1 year with ever-bearing strawberries, again, depending on market situation.
Excellent, very helpful. And so, obviously we're looking at a vertical farm, one of your projects behind you, I assume, with strawberries in it. And Alfonso Moreno from Mexico has a question about: what equipment do you use to control the humidity and temperature?
So typical, let's say, what they call climate control. So what's maybe an important aspect there? So temperature control, let's say that's the rather easy part. People often tend to forget humidity. Because a plant is active, it evaporates a lot of humidity into the air. And at a certain moment, well, that air is or can be saturated. If the humidity levels get higher outside than inside the crop, well, the crop just stops breathing, because it cannot release that humidity into the atmosphere. So there it's super important, and that's unfortunately depending on the growth stage you are, the variety that you have, that you need to know exactly what the transpiration rate is of your crops to ensure that you size your climate control accordingly. And then, of course, then you if you know that, you need to translate that into energy efficient climate control systems. So it's a continuous play. And then people say, well, can you grow other varieties? Yes, but you need to know if you start using, because let's say the Japanese varieties remain rather small, so they evaporate less humidity into the air. If you would then swap it with, let's say, a more European variety, which become more bushy, means that they evaporate way more water into your system, it might become a challenge over there. And of course, you don't want to oversize or undersize your climate control, because it has an impact on your capex, your investment cost, but also on your operational cost, because those systems they need to have a certain base load of work, because otherwise they will start working in a less optimal way, which results again then in higher operational cost figures, which influence your bottom line.
Yeah, I'm really glad you talked about the challenge of climate management overall, and humidity and the evapotranspiration of the plants and how that creates microclimates. I mean, you also need fans to make sure that you're having that
Exactly.
that flow over them, et cetera. And this is one of the key challenges in vertical farming. And actually, from Agritecture's perspective with our consulting, not only is a key challenge, but it's one that mistakes are being made the same way over and over again. And especially as the scale grows, it gets more difficult. A lot of people think that 1,000 square foot facility versus 10,000 square foot facility, you just sort of repeat the numbers. It does not scale in a sort of typical way. It's a totally different necessity. So just one more plug here again, whether it's in the initial classes, we talk about HVAC and how to manage climate control systems with Alberto, who's our lead systems designer and actually has done HVAC modeling for all of our client projects. And then in the advanced lesson, we've recently launched an advanced course, which is a deeper dive into some of these HVAC considerations as well, because it is so important. Okay, let's get back into some of the questions. We're staying on technology a little bit longer here, Alex, as you're answering these
Yeah.
questions extremely well. Let's talk about the grow lights used. What do you have to say about that?
Um, let's say next to climate control, well, lights are, let's say, pretty important. Why is maybe let's start first uh, with the why. Um, you start with young plants and you end up with fruit producing mother plants or big plants. They require, let's say, different lighting regimes. So immediately there you will see, well, you need to, in our opinion, to have dynamic lighting systems. So let's say one fixed spectrum lighting system, let's say, won't do the trick, or let's say they will, well, you will be able to grow, but you won't be, let's say, you won't get, let's say, max output out of your crop. So that's the reason why we're using fully dynamic lighting LEDs, which are, let's say, controlled by our own proprietary PLC. And depending on the growth stage, we will ensure that the right light comes to the right to the crop at the different stages. Which suppliers we work with? We're not married to one supplier, so we depending on the project, we will work with one or the other player, because there are, let's say, depending on the regions, massive tax benefits if you work with one or another player. So then again, it becomes a strategic element. So we can work with all of them, but depending on the region where we would propose either one or another, because our clients will benefit from tax credits, from subsidies, or name it, to reduce your initial investment costs.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that incentive structure and also remaining technology agnostic when it comes to something that's so significant in the CapEx structure and OpEx of lighting, because it is evolving. And like you said, in different markets, it may change. And I think sometimes people lock themselves into one approach too often. And it's important to, be open to what's possible. And this is
And
sort of also
especially if you look at the fairs, you see so many lighting providers. So
so many.
the development is so hard. So I think being married to one supplier would be, let's say, an error from our side, which would mean that we
Yes.
won't give the best value to our clients. So depending on what's happening, we are super flexible. So let's say the brain of our system, it's really ours. And depending on, again, location, technology development, name it, we can address issues, change it, modify it, optimize it. So yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into some other questions here a little bit, and then we'll talk about the market question here. But Sarah, who seems to be doing some research on this topic, wants to understand a bit more about the two things. One is, the sort of reuse, basically the reusability and sustainability of the equipment itself. Now, I'd love to hear your answer, but there really hasn't been a significant analysis of the embodied energy of the equipment in these vertical farms. And embodied energy is basically all the CO2 and energy in constructing what you see behind you, which is, typically a part of sustainability and the impact of various projects from buildings, et cetera, that hasn't gotten enough attention historically. But certainly in our sector, very, very little. I will say that Square Roots did write about sustainability, and they noted embodied energy as one of their most significant carbon footprint impacts. So, what about on your side? What about the equipment that you're seeing? Are you seeing a trend towards reusability, recyclability of some of these pieces of equipment as they decline in their lifetime value?
Um, for sure, I think it's a must to go into that direction. Let's say we can look at it from really the hardware part, but we and can also look, let's say, on the entrance sides. One of the elements that we focus a lot on is water usage. We're working with a fully closed water system, so we are reusing 100% of the drain constantly. So on that side, I think definitely for regions where there is water scarcity, our impact is massive. I'm not going to pretend we're 95% more efficient, because I hate that figure.
Yeah,
I cannot stand that people refer to one paper made by a professor in
Yes.
the 80s.
Yes.
But we are efficient with water, so we don't need to dump water into it's somewhere. We keep on reusing it and adapt our recipe in a dynamic way to ensure that we don't lose it. Same thing with substrate. On substrate, there is so much research ongoing that again we follow the majority of the suppliers to see, and we test their suppliers. At a certain moment, you have rock wool in there. Rock wool stayed as it's clean, it's produced, but if you then see the CO2 footprint of that product, we doubt the feasibility to introduce that in a sustainable way. So what you now see is that we try to get away from peat, but more into cocoa, the cocoa fibers that are used. But then again, you need to start questioning yourself, well, is that cocoa that is often coming from Sri Lanka, where they need to use a lot of water to wash all the salt out, is that a sustainable practice? I again doubt that it's sustainable. So I think at this stage, if you look at the substrate, a lot of question marks behind it. What we can do is, of course, well, if you can start making your own young plants, well, again, it's way closer. So the volume that you need to ship is way smaller instead of having those full trays of rooted cuttings, which are sometimes not even possible to ship. But if you cannot ship them, at least it pushes you to find a solution to work locally and keep the full chain in-house. So on that aspect, I think it has really some beneficial elements. And then I think the element that we like to stretch is, well, we use literally 0% of pesticides, zeros. I cannot stand to keep put even sending one of the guys to the shop to even consider buying it. So let's say it's 100% clean for us. So I think the product that our clients can produce out of our systems are really clean and are, let's say, continuously evolving, let's say, from a operational cost perspective, but also from a sustainability perspective, because I believe that there is no perfect system at the moment. It's not possible. The suppliers, substrate suppliers, try to invent new types of substrate, but let's say the perfect substrate hasn't been found yet.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, to that question that was asked, I mean, you answered a lot of questions related to water, substrates, et cetera. But I think just to add to that, there's not really like a viable sort of trade in your light and get an updated light process yet for, or even climate control systems yet. You know, these are controlled systems, right? So you really, it's very important when you're making this kind of investment that the control actually occurs. So that also makes it difficult to sort of change out equipment and maintain that consistency. Again, so keep that in purpose in mind. But I think everybody in the industry hopes that there will be more ways to optimize the sustainability of that equipment, including the operational sustainability elements that Alex alluded to and mentioned. Let's talk a bit about the market here, Alex. You're doing a great job with these questions. When we're talking about leafy greens, there's always this need to sort of go for a market, a customer that's willing to pay a little bit more, right? Maybe the price of organic, or maybe willing to pay more because it's local or because it's pesticide free, all these various benefits. But it's quite difficult in most cases to just compete on price because let's be honest, you have a higher capex, you typically have a smaller level of volume than outdoor farms, and also it's a higher quality product. So why would you sell it at the same price? Is this what's happening with your customers? Are they doing the same strategy that we see in leafy greens? Are they selling at a premium price, or what's happening there?
Let's say, as you mentioned, actually, Henry, let's say vertical farming, let's say, is the most controlled way of farming. So it comes, as you said, with a high capex and often with a up to slightly higher OPEX or super high OPEX. So let's say our systems, while we get to, let's say, very interesting figures, and let's say the market that we target, let's say it's if you would divide the market in two, we won't focus on low quality, cheap produce. If let's say you get or you want to get into that market segment, well, those are buyers that they let's say focus on price but less on quality. And that's a bit the thing, that at a certain moment, well, you come up with super clean produce in a stable, consistent way. So why would you try to target those type of customers? Let's say the big project that we're doing in Quebec is we're selling to a distributor that even resells to other distributors. So we're already pretty low in the market, but let's say that project won't compete to the super cheap Californian strawberries. If you want to go into that scene, then
Yeah.
not even greenhouses can compete to those prices. So you need to, I think, look at your market and see, well, where does it make sense? And there again, vertical farming is really not always the best solution. So again, vertical farming is a nice technology, but it's definitely not the only solution. So really want to stretch that uh, to,
Appreciate
uh,
that.
to the audience, because you see often that they say, yeah, vertical farming will solve world hunger and so on. Well, it will be part of the solution, but a part of the solution and not the only solution.
Yeah, that hyperbole of the future of farming, or this is sustainable. This is what sustainable agriculture looks like, or food security. We agriculture. We feel very strongly about eliminating and reducing the amount of greenwashing that occurs. That's quite rampant in our sector, and it's improving. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to agritecture.com/sustainability, where we have free guidelines for anyone to communicate honestly about CEA, including vertical farming, without greenwashing, including how do you talk about food security without greenwashing? How do you talk about water savings without greenwashing? And I think one of the key points that Alex mentioned earlier, that's a good sign of their values and integrity as a company and him as a leader, is he doesn't say 95% less water, but instead, let's talk more specifically about the fact that we're recirculating it and how much. And that's part of greenwashing. Instead of saying we save 95% less water based on some study from before, why don't we say this is how much water we're using, and this is what our goal is to reduce water to this amount. Providing data about your actual performance is one of the key ways that you can reduce greenwashing. Same thing with food security. Who are you actually feeding? How many of them? And what are you doing to improve their nutrition specifically, as opposed to using such a big word like food security or sustainability? Now,
Exactly.
your pesticide question, or your pesticide comment, seems to have stimulated some more questions here. So everyone's asking, how do you manage pests without pesticides? We've gotten so many questions about fungicide and pest control. So what's the quick answer on that one? Because we're getting a lot more questions. So what's the quick answer on how do you manage pests and disease?
Let's say, first of all, start with high quality young plants, disease free. I think that helps already a lot. If you bring in diseases into your system, they spread super easy because you create the super perfect climate to spread and to infect all the other crops. So let's say that's step one. Second step is, well, we work with natural predators. Let's say strawberries are known to have some pests and diseases that are really linked to strawberries. So we bring in, let's say, those typical natural predators in there. And of course, what we do is we monitor plant growth. And by seeing, well, a plant is more or less active, you can start detecting some signals in your plant activity. That's a thing that we're currently developing to monitor, is your plant active compared to what it should do. So those three elements ensure that we don't need to use pesticides or so on.
Yeah, excellent, concise answer. Thank you for that. Now, this question is a bit more about the industry overall. This is a tough one, actually. I'm curious how you're going to answer it, because I think I should actually provide an answer too. But what would be the biggest and most important challenge for indoor farming?
For strawberry farming,
I mean, indoor farming in general. Let's say vertical farming, actually, I think is what they mean by indoor farming, not greenhouses, which typically.
I want to go back to my answer that vertical farming is not the best solution for every problem or any product in any market that you want to try to enter. So I think in that perspective, I would really say, well, that's the biggest challenge. You need to understand very well which market am I entering into, which location am I, do I want to install my production facility? Can it be full soil, greenhouse, all types, or vertical farming? Do I get the offtake which is needed? Because that, again, there is so much product flown in and out and exported, imported. So you really need to understand those market dynamics in a very proper way to ensure that, let's say, either type of farming becomes successful. So I think that the answer is a bit similar to greenhouse production and full soil production. So you really need to understand what you get into.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer again, Alex. I just add to it and agree with you. When it comes to vertical farming in particular, the high capex itself increases levels of risk. We talked about how we can get ultimate control, and that can solve some key problems in supply chains and demand. But the technology itself is not a solution. And as that risk is increased by that capex and that technology, you have to be very cautious about it. So in my experience, and again, we're 12 years now that I've been doing this, so many times people get obsessed with the technology because look at it. Look where Alex is. It's so cool. It's so interesting. It's so utopian. It represents so many things that we can get excited about. Engineering, no pesticides, less water use, local production, resilient production. So exciting that it can blind you. It can distract you from the business case. And like any business, it begins with the question of what's the gap you're filling, which is who are your customers? How many of them are there? How much are they willing to pay? It's definitely the less sexy part of planning the business, but it's so important, which is why Alex emphasized it multiple times, why I'm emphasizing it. And again, in our software, it's one of the key things in the courses and one of the first things that we have you focus on before you even look at the technologies and model them. So do yourself a favor and don't let the allure of tech distract you from the importance of the market.
Exactly. Maybe to add on that, we've spoken about, let's say, a lot about vertical farming. Maybe the next trend is upside down farming to be the best. So in my opinion, technology is a mean, or diagonal farming. I don't know. Maybe that's way better, but we didn't see about it. We didn't learn about it yet. So for us, technology is really a mean, but not a goal in itself. Because indeed, the first one you get wowed, the second time you're already, well, nice, but not that wowed anymore. And the 10th time you're in there, well, good. Well, I hope the lights are still on, that the temperature is in control, and that's it. So let's say that wow effect really, well, it's still there. If you show people around, you're very proud about what you show, but indeed focus on the business.
You know what's a wow effect is actually supplying food consistently, having a healthy margin, and being able to maintain that business. That is wow. That is like more wow.
Yes. Black figures at the bottom.
Yeah, not black figures at the bottom, not bankruptcies. That you want the right kind of wow. Okay, so we are getting so many questions. It's just out of control here. So best enclosure options, like insulation enclosure option. Briefly, any thoughts on that, Alex?
No, let's say again, it's a shell. You need to, it then depends on the location, how you want to insulate your farm. So no, let's say hardcore requirements. So it's really dependent on location that it will be bigger or thinner. So no.
This question from Elaine is a good one. It's about what are the choices for renewable energies that make sense today in the market in North America. Look, I mean, I think that if you care about sustainable agriculture or sustainability in general, you need to give yourself a careful look as you start a business about something like energy and where you're going to source from. We have clients that benefit from being, and Alex had mentioned he has customers that benefit from being in places with an abundance of renewable energy like Quebec, for example, okay, or parts of Ontario, et cetera. So there are certain markets that have renewable energy that's abundant that makes it easier. But there's other markets that it's a little bit more difficult. For example, in Texas, where there is renewable energy options, but there's also non-renewable energy choices. You can choose in most North American markets, you can choose to buy renewable energy. Okay, you can choose to do that, and you can put that into your model. So if that matters to you in North America, there really is a way to do it. Now, again, in many markets, it might be more expensive. It might be more difficult. You might not be getting it necessarily in the same way as the whole grid is renewable, but you do have the capacity to do it in most markets, even European markets. You can now choose to buy those. So the key is, again, like, why are you doing this? What's your objective? What's your purpose? And how important is that? And I think that goes back again to greenwashing and what you want to say about your farm. If you want to claim to be sustainable, you probably shouldn't be sourcing your energy from non-renewable sources that increase the carbon footprint of your per kilograms of output. I don't know if you have anything to add there, Alexander, but
No,
okay, great.
no, totally agree. Totally agree on that. 100%.
Okay, cool. Okay, we're almost getting there. What are some of the highest limits to scaling up these businesses? This is adjustments to designs, et cetera. But like, what are some of the key problems? We talked about climate control and HVAC, but what else relates to that might be there? And then we're going to answer one more question, and then we're going to wrap up. So stay tuned for the wrap up, you guys.
I would say people tend to forget, well, you have a growing system, but you forget the operations around it. So let's say people put a beautiful facility in place and forget, well, these systems, well, they produce quite some volume. So you need to be able to ensure that volume also gets out of the system in a very efficient way, because it will be either done in a fully automatic way, but there again, it comes with a high cost. So you need to very well understand what you are doing. So in the most cases, you will use labor. Well, it's cost per hour or cost per month. And if they work in a very inefficient way, that might limit your scaling options enormously. So
Right.
I would definitely put people to also tend to focus only on the technology, but after technology, well, how are you going to pack it? Is it done in an efficient way? How are you going to push it to your customers and so on? So actually, you have done only half of the job when your product is ready. So then you need to start picking it, and then it needs to end up in the truck where it either they come and pick it up, or you need to drive it to your customers. So that's still a very important scaling aspect that's often forgotten, and which has tremendous impact again on your operational figures. So I would highlight that one, just to focus on that.
Okay, very quickly, artificial intelligence. Are you doing something with AI?
Maybe what's the definition of AI? Because everybody's doing AI and machine learning and IoT and whatsoever. No, let's say what we do is we gather a lot of data. We structure the data, we visualize the data, which is already a big part of the job. And now let's say we are developing a tool where we will measure plant activity and so on. And there we will start training a model. To call it AI, I think that's a step
Yeah.
too far. I would say we use a lot of data in an intelligent way, but let's say I'm not going into using the buzzword AI for the sake of AI. Let's say I prefer to focus on we grow or enable to grow the best quality strawberries, regardless of all the technology used in there.
Right. And I'm sure that was a very honest answer. We really appreciate that again. And I'm sure you're using aspects of, cameras that can look at the plants and
Exactly.
capture data just to answer this question. And someone's giving a, branded strawberry AI sort of claim there. So they're getting some ideas there. Um, Alex, I really want to thank you. I mean, I think you represent so many of the good things in this industry, and I'm so glad you opened up your schedule with this time to share. For all of you listening, I want to thank you as well. If you enjoyed this webinar, there's something you can do. You can follow Vertiberry or Agritecture or both on Instagram. You could also be more specific and give Alex or I a recommendation on LinkedIn about your experience, what you benefited from, which is always a nice thing to do when people are contributing to you. And again, just finally, one last plug. This is a free webinar, and Agritecture Designer also has a 7-day free trial where you can explore this question. And here's just a highlight of some of our options for plans, which you can look at as well to learn about the various ways you can plan any greenhouse or vertical farm using typical data and performance before we connect you with incredible suppliers like Vertiberry. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone. Wishing you and your family a safe and pleasant rest of the day.
Thank you very much, Henry. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.